while we start with the masterclass, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to introduce the challenge for which we're doing this masterclass. We've launched the Udyami Sathi Challenge, a storytelling challenge which has been powered by SIDBI. The idea is to bring out and promote stories of micro entrepreneurs and their enterprises from across the country. This is the second masterclass in a series of masterclasses that we are doing. And it's good to see some new and some old faces, names actually. I think we can begin, Himanshu. People can continue joining in. All right. I like to take I like to take a couple of minutes to introduce Amrit. Amrit is a creative, funny, and it's insightful storyteller. He's the co-founder of corevoice.in, which is a one-of-its-kind venture which looks at strategy and top-class content to help early-stage startups find their core voice. He is a filmmaker and he creates amazing human impact stories under the banner of 3-minute stories. We'll share the link in the chat. You must check it out. And to keep the artist in him alive, he also does a little bit of wedding photography from time to time. Amrit is here to tell us how to tell stories using video. And so happy to have you here, Amrit. I love the stories you tell and can't wait for what you have in store for us today. Over to you.
Thanks, Aishwarya. Very good morning to everybody. And let me see if I can share my screen. Can the host enable my screen sharing?
Yes, just a second.
Okay. Desktop one. All right, so I'm just confirming if my screen is visible to everybody.
It is.
Okay. Okay, thanks once again, Aishwarya. Just to confirm that, so everybody here is some sort of, like all of you guys are, I'm wondering how would you make use of all that I talk about today? Like you would end up, at the place that you are, whatever you work you are doing, you think that there are stories that can be captured in a video and that's where it would be useful, right? Just making sure that the context is very clear to me. If I'm missing something, you can tell me, Aishwarya.
No, right, Amrit. So the idea is that participants can use this as a starting point
Okay.
to tell stories of micro entrepreneurs using video as a format.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Sorry, let me just start with, what is a basic story structure, right? Any narrative, any description, any video, any write-up, even when you go on a stage and talk about something, it could sound and feel like a story if it has this structure. And it wouldn't be a story, it wouldn't feel like you are being told a story if it doesn't have a structure. So can we also settle on a common film so that when I talk about something, we have a common reference point? I just want to make sure, like, I would like to just stick to Gully Boy as a movie for common reference point, because my short films, most of you wouldn't have seen, so that we all can imagine the same thing together. Otherwise, I might be saying something and you might be imagining something. So I don't know how to ask, but I'm assuming most of you have seen Gully Boy. Is there a way to like make sure that everybody is fine with that option?
You all can reply in chat. Yes, we have comments coming in chat. Yeah.
Okay, so and I'm imagining a simple popular movie, because all these concepts also apply to a short documentary format, anything that you make. the overall structure is going to be the same. So hook is something which when you start watching it, right? In a movie, it's the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes. On a Instagram or a YouTube, it's the first 30 seconds. Something which grabs your attention is a hook, which is just that. And we'll talk more about it. And you need not have it if you think your original starting point itself is very catchy. That's cool. But technically, your original beginning and original end, if you feel that they're not exciting, you can add something in the beginning which is not too out of context, but just very catchy. That most films have it. James Bond movie, a Gully Boy, for example, starts with some action without any context. Some these guys go and start robbing a car, and you just get hooked into it, and slowly the context gets built, like what was happening. And likewise, most of the movies would have a hook, which is not the real starting point of a story. And second aspect is context setting. In a movie, in a 2-hour movie, filmmakers might take about 20 minutes. 1 second, sorry. Relax. In a 1-hour movie, a filmmaker might take 15-20 minutes to set the context of where we are, who is related to how. In Gully Boy, likewise, in 20 minutes, we know that there is this guy who lives in a slum. He has a mom, he has an abusive dad, he has a girlfriend, he somehow likes to write and stuff like that. The story hasn't really started, but we are setting context. A lot of those films, the short documentaries or the micro entrepreneur stories you would make would end up just being that, by the way. It's very possible that you just do that. You talk about what the person does, and there is no real story there, which is also fine. Just want to clarify that not every short video is frankly a story. A story, and we'll come to what makes something a story. And that's the beauty of a short format, that it's fine if it doesn't fit the structure, because if there is a good hook and the context that you are setting, like introducing a character, talking about something is interesting, most people are able to watch just that for 3 to 4 to 5 minutes. Only while making something really long, like a 1 hour or 2 hour, it's almost impossible to just keep setting the context, keep talking about the character or the philosophy, and keep talking about what we do. You have to go somewhere else. But if you can pull that off in a short format, it just becomes a little more engaging. It's not possible all the time in real life stories, but when you could do that, that is when we call it a story. Till then, it is basically a hook and a context setting, which is a lot of my work also. Although I might call them 3-minute stories, are all of them really stories? Not necessarily. Some of them indeed are. So then the rest of the thing which makes a story a real story is you open a gap and you close a gap, which basically means that there has to be a big curious question in your mind, right? Once in Gully Boy, that thing happens when Ranveer Singh spots that MJ, what some Sher, I forgot his name, but MC Sher on stage, and then he's like, you know what? Now I have this feeling how I'll start my journey. Till then, it was just context setting, and we knew that where it was headed, but nothing had started. And then we don't know what will happen, right? He just spots a person. We know that this person will start walking in this direction. And, if you remember the end of the movie, something around that theme concludes where the biggest gap that was open closes. So likewise, in your when you're featuring some person, if they say, you know what, a lot of documentary stories are typically in flashback, where you like, I saw this problem. And then the audience watches because they're not sure how that person solved that problem by starting up, by raising funds, by setting up a non-profit. These are typical gaps that we open. Except in a movie, it's a little better because you can script it and write it. In documentaries, it becomes a narration, which is difficult to make engaging, and we'll also reach there. But again, to sum up, this is all that is there to a story structure. I'll just move on and say, this is not good enough for you to actually make a good story. So I have written down these points. Today's idea is that maybe once this PPT is shared with you, if you feel like exploring more on, beyond the basic structure, how do I actually make a better 2-minute, 3-minute video? This is what you need to go to YouTube and Google and research more on. There's a bunch of content, but I'm just throwing the right keyword so that you end up consuming the right sort of information, right? There are books around it, YouTube videos around it, and tons of explanations around all of these. So and if you do that, this is going to take about 6 months, 1 year, and based on how much you do. So this is just a reference point for you guys to research more wherever you feel like. Number one, story and storytelling, right? So what I just said, the structure, anything that fits in that structure will feel and sound like a story. Storytelling is, it could be a good story or a bad story. It could be a boring story or an interesting story. So that is where storytelling comes. Because the structure, as you saw, was a little broad, only 4 or 5 elements. Anything that fits in is a story. How you personally feel like telling it, or how a Zoya Akhtar feels like telling it, or how a Karan Zohar feels like telling it, or even in documentary films, different documentary filmmakers have a different style. That is the telling of that same story, which is very personal. And so this is where the science and the art comes. If the story doesn't have those elements that we spoke about, it just wouldn't sound and feel like a story. But how you are telling it, how much time you're spending on which element you are choosing to ignore is up to you. And there is no right or wrong way there. But there is definitely a right or wrong way when it comes to what a story is. So some people write like, can you really define this craft? Answer is yes. Story is defined. Storytelling is little subjective. Pace is again one of the elements of storytelling, right? In a short documentary or in a short video, you want to have, again, once you know your audience, you can decide the pace of the story. But every time you felt bored of a movie, the filmmaker had a certain pace in mind which didn't work for the audience. So at all points of time, sometimes you yourself are the audience, right? You know your friends and people like you are going to watch it, so you can sort of sense it. This is something which is difficult to teach, but sometimes a good story is not watched by many because of bad storytelling. And one example of bad storytelling is bad pacing. Everything else is fine, but the pacing is bad. Inciting incident, we already covered sort of. This is again, what is the inciting incident? If you go to YouTube, you'll realize how every movie uses it. In fact, every short film also, like your 3-minute video on a micro entrepreneur should use it. This is where the story starts. When I said open a gap, inciting incident is a technical word in storytelling, which is used when that big gap opens. When the context has been set, if there was a hook or something interesting in the beginning, then that has been set. And we know what the gap is. In a character-driven story, the typical gap is there is a character who wants something. So Ranveer Singh wants to become an artist, or a guy loves a girl. So the first 20 minutes, you're figuring out what is happening. And then eventually the story begins when we now know he wants to marry this girl, but we don't know how. And then the rest of the whole film will be, and a superhero movie, right? After the context is set, these guys want to destroy a planet, or these guys want to save a planet. So that is an inciting incident will happen. A whole scene will be there just for that thing to happen. And then the story really begins. As I said, for most of the, let's say when I make a film for startups, the inciting incidents would typically be that we spotted this problem in the market. For a non-profit, again, it would be same, like X million children in Orissa are dying of malnutrition is an inciting incident, because at that point, as a viewer, the solution is not clear. And the boring way, but also the most of the times how people do inciting incident in the starting point in a narrative or a documentary is somebody says that. They just say on camera, I spotted this problem. Which is fine. That, as I said, in a lot of such things that we do, we are doing a retrospective, like something has happened and we are going and trying to tell that story. And it's odd to then recreate it, while therefore a movie looks much better because there is a scene written to create that. Ranveer Singh saw this guy on stage, you saw that scene, and that whole scene was, if I made a documentary on a real life rapper, it would be him telling that, I was in a college and one day I saw this. And if you go on Netflix, some of these documentary makers, they realize that because this is boring, sometimes they will recreate scenes. But I guess that is very high budget. You will have to get actors and reenact, and you'll have to get into all that territory. But I'm just saying that the shortcut way of inciting incident is just a person narrating about that point. But it's important for you to be aware about it, because that till that point becomes clear, right? A lot of documentary edits, I see that, when you interview somebody, they will talk about their life philosophies. They will also talk about a lot of stuff which is interesting. It's important for you to place the inciting incident wala part in the beginning, where that person clearly says, and imagine the end, right? What do you really want? If that is not clear somewhere in the beginning after the hook, it will become a very arty story, and people might watch it, people might not, but it will not be very clear what was this video about. And then you can indulge yourself into anything that you want as you talk about it. So what was the problem? And also, don't directly tell the solution. So in a Gully Boy, if the moment he meets, and we cut it to the last scene where he narrates, and then eventually, like if you ask a person, he will say, I saw this MC share on stage, I got inspired, and eventually I went and won this show. A lot of times people describe their own story in like 2 lines, but as a interviewer, you will have to sort of make sure that the last point and the first point extract a lot more in the middle, and we'll come to that. That is what makes a story engaging. Once you know the starting point and you sort of already know the end point. In non-profits, the end point would be, oh, we have done so much, we want to raise so much of money. Typically, otherwise, I'm not sure why a non-profit would make any video at all. They always want to raise money, right? I mean, otherwise, there is always a lot more work to be done. So the story is never ending, but it is ending somewhere. And that somewhere is in the last 3 years, we have had so much of impact. In a micro entrepreneur, same, right? I mean, if you have just started, it probably is too early to make a film, but you'll focus on one achievement, which is your end, and you focus on the beginning of where that person started, and then try to fill up enough stuff in the middle and end it like that. So, and what does it take to make that middle part interesting? We'll come to that. So I already covered when does the story end, right? You have to already imagine where the story is ending so that your inciting incident is directly linked to how you want to end it, and make sure that when you're interviewing someone, you're able to get that part. So you already have a beginning and end well defined. Now it's a matter of things in between. I will cover something called conflict,
Amrit, one request. This is a lot to take in. If you could just go thoda slow,
okay.
It'll be great.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And can I also just take questions at this point of time, so that as I said, you can always research about these items on YouTube and figure more about this. Any questions that I can take to quickly just take a 5-minute break and continue my bullet points?
Sure. You can either drop your questions in the chat, or you can also unmute yourselves and ask.
Yeah, I'll keep this chat box open side, man.
So I have a quick question. I don't know if we can ask one right now. Many a times what happens is an organization gives you like a day or two to make a video and give back, right? And you don't have that much time to storyboard or to go through these things, and they need a quick brief video. So how many of these do you think would be good to keep priority as? Like, for example, pace of the video might be, let's say micro entrepreneurs are the basis of COVID relief, like someone who's lost their breadwinner. So I have only a day and a half or two max to go and cover a story, or at times even 3-4 stories. How do you think one can actually approach that situation in terms?
Yeah, okay. So I'll answer you. Pace specifically can be set during the editing part of your story. Okay. Once you are actually putting it together, you can watch it, rewatch it, and figure it out. Awareness about all these points will make sure that you are shooting the right stuff and asking the right questions. That's all it will do. It will not make you spend any more days than you do. In fact, it will save you time. You might end up shooting way less because you know what you want, compared to just going there without any clarity. And so when somebody says we want a video, that itself needs to be questioned, right? Nobody wants a video, right? People want to achieve something, right? So very clear to know why do you want a video, who will watch it, and what do you want to achieve with it. And going back here, right? Sometimes you have to be clear. Do you even want a story, or do you just want a testimonial or a bite of somebody? Do you want a video, or do you want to show that this is how it happens? Because unless I show something visually, people don't get it. So that clarity is important to even decide if are we shooting a story or are we doing a news coverage, right? So my short answer again is knowledge of this does not lead to spending more time. So your question is not directly linked to understanding what goes inside making a story. So in a documentary, you don't have to be aware about what the inciting incident is, but there has to be a beginning and the end, right? So in your head, you already have to, whether you do storyboard or not, if you do not know what my beginning and my end is, then you might just not end up asking that question or capturing the wrong footage, even when you had the same amount of time. So it just changes how you utilize your same time.
Yeah, Amrit, I would request if you can complete your part of the story, then the flow will be maintained and we can understand, have a better understanding. And then after that, we can have questions in between. Thank you.
Sure. But I can assure you that you will not understand much, to be honest. So the only benefit of this workshop will be that you are now aware of certain terms to dig deep into at some point of time. They're all like, I've been doing it for 10 years, so it's all intuitive for me. So this jargon, the keywords that you're looking is very important for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't know how to even become better at it. So, okay, I'll just continue these 3 points left here. Talking about conflict, right? So I said that, let's say you have figured out and in fact, let me quote this example, right? So we have some COVID person who did something in COVID relief. They went and sort of raised some money, and some guys were stuck in a house and whatever. They didn't know where to go, and through a phone, this person finds out. And we want to capture this story of my COVID relief warrior who sort of helped them get rescued or whatever. They wanted to go back to their village. So this person arranged a bus and put them on the bus. That's the story I'm trying to tell. And that has already happened. Let's also assume that we probably have some photos, but there is just one person who can now narrate most of it. When we think about the starting point, we would obviously say that how did you get to know about the problem? And the end point is how we eventually managed to get them on a bus. And then eventually once they reach their homes, they sent a WhatsApp saying, hey, thank you so much. You have very successfully. That's the story. And then let's say the agenda of the story is whatever, like, I mean, right now it's already over, but back then when it would have been made, then you would have said that we want to raise so much of more money so that we can help XYZ more people, right? So it's very clear. The starting is clear, the end is clear. This story would have been, if you understand the concept of conflict, you can extract some more better nuanced answers from those people who did it. Because most folks who go out and do work are not great storytellers, right? So they can answer specific questions, but they cannot naturally just tell you the story of what happened, right? You have to invoke those questions. And the details I will cover, but conflict is when you want to do something and you run into a problem, right? Oh, I wanted to arrange a bus, but the last bus left. I had a bus managed, but it just got full because some other volunteer also get 10 more people to it. And it was very weird because I had already promised it. So anything. A lot of times when you interview people, they underplay all of this, right? They want to focus on the positives. They have already moved on from the challenges. But in a real story, challenges is all that matters. Going back to Gully Boy, right? I mean, as I said, if the real life Ranveer Singh would have had he been a rapper, if you ask them, they would severely underplay all the obstacles and just talk about the good things. A story will become very boring. So this is where you want to figure out what are the conflicting moments that happened, which is where they wanted to do something, but something happened because, so there are three types, right? One is external, where you were expecting somebody to show up, but they didn't. Then how did you manage that, or whatever? Something happened, accident happened, this happened, phone got lost. Those people were basically lying about something, etc., etc. Internal is when you yourself go in a self-doubt. Now, I don't know how much in the micro entrepreneur stories that you might, but sometimes it would happen that the real doubt is inside that person, that he will say, I was not very sure, should I really be doing it? That is a conflict, because any story where that happens, as an audience, I want to know, how did you go over that? How did you resolve that, right? Because the answer is not clear, and it goes back to that gap and filling the gap. Philosophical conflict is definitely very crucial for a long format story, where what is the story ultimately about, right? If you make a 1 hour, again, Gully Boy ultimately is about, if you see a lot of scenes, just say that, should I dream big and do things which is not expected of me? Or should I just stick to what I'm supposed to do? And if you, any of you can go back that movie, there are literally scenes trying to make us remember this philosophical conflict of the whole story. In a short documentary, if you spot it, now that you're aware, you can always spot it, that everybody was telling that, you know what, you can't help everyone, let them go. And yet I knew that I have to put my best foot forward. That sort of a take from a person is a philosophical take. And once you know that your story is about that take, then you want to sort of make sure that you ask more questions about those who were against this philosophy, which philosophy is that you can't help everybody, compared to this person who's saying, no, I will go and help everybody till I die. So anyway, I'm giving extreme examples, but sometimes you will find that people are not very clear about if there was a philosophical take. They were just showing up for their duty. But there are three different conflicts. Each of these, and in a 3-4 minute video, there is only one that you can focus on, and you will discover all of them while asking questions. Today is too short for me to tell how to ask questions, but asking questions itself is probing and understanding and making them realizing that people who have done something are not necessarily great at telling stories. Some of them are, and you will see them showing up on these talks. But a lot of 99% people do great work, but shy away from talking about it, or don't know how exactly to talk about it. Active versus passive characters. In our case that we are talking about, all the micro entrepreneurs are active characters, meaning that they want to do something, they wanted to do something, they did something, and as a result, something else happened. In a movie, if there are 5-6 different characters, there will be 1 or 2 active characters who will decide that I will do this, and then something will happen. And there are a bunch of characters will just be supporting characters. And you can again go back and watch the movie or Gully Boy and realize that 2-3 characters are active. When they do something, there's a consequence. Other characters are just there to be the, the consequence of what happens affects them, but they don't do anything actively. In a short documentary film with one character, whichever character we choose will always be the active character. The character will always want to do something. The whole story will be generally from the character's point of view. And even if we're doing it from a like a group, like a non-profit, where like 3-4 people are working together, it's just easier if you pick up one character, either from the beneficiary side, like if you help somebody, pick up a person who was helped, or pick up the person who helped based on what you think makes more sense. And therefore make sure that if you pick up the person who is being helped, it sometimes becomes difficult to make that person as an active character. So you have to remember that active character is always trying. So if a beneficiary is trying to be helped, they are active character, and that's the story we want to watch. If they were just waiting, somebody showed up, it's just a boring story, because then show the story from the person who showed up, not the person who was just waiting and doing nothing. I'll just take a break here. Any more questions? Because this is a lot, and by listening to me, you can't become better at it. Once you make stories and you look back and see why does my story look weird, then you will realize that you are not able to get these footage/interview questions when you go and capture what you do. And then comes the editing. If you have all the answers and the footage, you can definitely re-edit it, edit it, and eventually get it done. But if you don't even have that, then nobody can help, right? So, and I'll come to visual story, which is once you have got the shots, what shots are important to make a very visually coherent story, because we're talking about video after all, right? Any questions at this point?
We have a question in the chat, Amrit. Yeah.
Do you explain the context of your story to the micro entrepreneur so that they know why you're talking to them? So yeah, so I'll tell you one thing here. The reason some videos look good as stories, because all of us, right, we watch non-fiction, we watch fiction movies like a Gully Boy again. There is no context. Why do we watch that for 2 hours? Simply because as human beings, when there is a curious gap in the beginning, it's unsettling for us to not care about the answer to that. How did the gap fill? So this human psychology is why some content are told like a story. Some TED Talks, there is an opening question, we don't know the answer, so we watch that entire 10 minutes, and then it's a matter of engaging. At what point do I get bored? Do I have some other priorities to go back to? So that is first, because we are telling it in the format of a story. It doesn't matter if it's we necessarily make it relevant to them. Just by virtue of it being a story, people will watch it. But if there is something that you think makes it even more watchable, or you think that your story is even not that strong, but if I can hype up my relevancy, go ahead and do that. But there is no right or wrong answer in that. A good story will be seen even by those who don't need to watch it simply because it was good. A bad story needs like a specific, this presentation I have not tried to storify it because my audience is here to learn this craft. My deck is talking about that craft, so relevancy is well established. So yeah, I mean, and if you know that you don't have to establish context, it will be waste of time for you to spend 2 minutes in your video to establish the context if you think that they would already get it. So it's literally case by case basis, a call can be taken. Does that answer?
Yeah, it does, Amrit. And also, I was also wondering that, do you, before you get into the process of actually making the story, do you also share your process with the micro entrepreneur and, sit with them and say that, मैं अगर कहानी बना रहा हूँ तो मेरा कहानी बनाने के पीछे का जो कारण है वो ये है, ताकि because then they can also formulate their answers, their feelings, what they want to share in that certain kind of framework, which will be easy for them and for you when you're working on the story in terms of the editing and the scripting and stuff.
Yeah, the answer is there is no way somebody who doesn't do storytelling will get any of that. So what works is you have to just make sure that the objective is clear. The process is, nobody cares about the process except you. Even right now, you guys are not clear about the process. So process is something which nobody cares. People want to care, what do I need to do and why? These two things have to be very clear. So again, if you're going to macro entrepreneur, are they clear on, does he or she know what are you going to do this video for? That clarity, and then therefore, what do I need to do? Do I need to give you 1 hour? Do I need to get one more person to hang around and show this to you? That these are two things that beyond that, nobody has ever really, I mean, if some people like to, what I have also been trying to tell stories, then that's a level of conversation that you can have with some people. But I feel that objective and exactly what is required are the only two things that are required. The process It's not worth it. I mean, I don't know why would anybody care about the process at all.
But I mean, because if you don't really care about the process, will you then be doing justice to the kind of story that you're trying to make? If you're only focused on the objective,
Yeah.
then will there be any active engagement with the story? Will one be able to connect with the story in an active way, whether it is the micro entrepreneur or whether it is the storyteller from a personal point of view as well, or will it just be something which has to be done and thus it is being done?
Correct. Can you give me
You
a
don't
specific
connect with the
example? Can you give me a specific example? Let's give me an objective for approaching somebody.
So, for example, if I'm talking to say a potter and I'm talking to him कि आप जो मटके बनाते हो वो किस तरह से मटके बनाते हो, कहाँ से मिट्टी लाते हो?
We'll come to the questions part. Don't skip to that. So there's a potter. We want to make a video on the potter. A potter is a micro entrepreneur. Why are we making a video?
To share his story with the people. So if we don't connect with the potter at a personal level and share the process with him, that मैं अगर आपकी कहानी सुन रहा हूँ, अगर आपकी कहानी का वीडियो बना रहा हूँ, तो उसके पीछे का कारण ये.
Hold on, you have made that point. So I'll ask one by one. Why are we making this story? To share this story with the potter. And why should the potter care about that? Why does the potter want his or her story to be shared?
Because it's his or her story. So if the potter says that I'm not gonna allow you, आप जाओ यहाँ से, then where will we be? So therefore, I feel it is.
You're not answering my question. Why does a potter want their story to be shared with the world? Is not very clear to me right now. I'm a potter. You have come to me. Why do I want my story to be shared with the world?
You will get more business if people know about you and your craft.
Let's say I agree to that, right? All I'm saying is that's the only conversation you need to have. I do not care about your process. You are doing something. I need to know what is in it for me. Once I know it's good for my business, then I'll ask you this thing. Hey, I trust you with what you do. What do I need to do?
But okay, I agree with you. But is it not important to share just a brief of the process with them? Because no. I feel that is slightly selfish.
I mean, you might feel whatever you feel, but answer is no. That's your feeling.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I mean, I am also a storyteller in a way. So for me, process is more important than observation. But everyone has their own way of doing it. So I agree with I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So again, just to recap, as a storyteller, without process, you can't do a good story. Most of your subjects, don't care about the process. They care about what they want to do, right? So I have to tell them, hey, you know what? I want to shoot you with your child, right? And that's it. If they understood, see, if somehow they don't trust with what your objective is, that's first problem. If then nothing else matters. So once they trust that this person is saying what he means, and that also means you have to live up to it. If you make a story and it doesn't get them business, you wasted their time. And of course, then it's not helpful at all. So you have to be open that, hey, you know what, I'm trying to do this and this. Maybe some people will see it, maybe nobody will deal. Is it worth you giving 2 days of your time, getting children, and everybody enjoys that process? They enjoy the process. They don't have to know about the process. The very basic difference, right? Don't have to try to explain them. Tell them your ask. I want to shoot this. Can I go to their school? Can I go to this? Can I go to your mandi? Or you're comfortable there, uncomfortable there. Making them comfortable in the process is not the same as explaining the process to them. Okay, that's all I'm saying. What they need to know is the intention. Otherwise, it becomes very weird because they are not very sure why are they investing their energy in all of that. Okay, so now coming to this what we just spoke about so far applies to whether you're writing about it in a blog, which is little easier because you can just keep on editing the text, right? You don't have to depend upon any B-roll. Once you have got the story, the only thing matters is if you didn't get the story right, you will write it in a wrong way. You will write it in a patronizing way, maybe. You will write it in a rich, saves poor way and all of that. And that only with maturity you will realize the wrong way to write a story and the right way to write a story. How much you empathize with them. Are you writing a story on a certain community which you don't, and you yourself belong to a community which has a different power hierarchy and all of that. So they will reflect in all of it, right? So we carry our biases and typically avoid stories where you belong to a community with a different power hierarchy. And if you do that, go with a sense of vulnerability. So if I am an able-bodied person doing a story on somebody with a disability, I have to assume that I'm going to screw it up. and I would first look around if there is a person with disability who could do that. If I belong to a Brahmin community and go and do a story on the Dalit community, I have to assume that I'm going to screw it up. And first thing I will try to find is actually a person from that community. The reverse is untrue, right? If I am a disabled person and I want to do a story on able bodies, the power hierarchy is different. So I doesn't really matter how I do that story because that voice hasn't been heard enough. So those things will apply to most of the stories that we're talking about, whether we write it or make videos. But when we are doing videos, some of these things also make it a little better. And how many of you are aware of this concept? But you can go and so there is this concept of B-roll, because sometimes interviews is not engaging. So we need to have more shots of people doing something, whatever it is, right? People in action, nature, shots of nature and stuff like that. And although if you watch any documentary, you will get a sense that let's overlay some shots over the interview. What a lot of beginner video editors or shooters / editors go wrong is it's pretty random. As in, there is no logic to the visual flow. There is no sequence of it. Again, it's too short for me to talk about it. But there are a lot of ways where, let's say I've written something called a wide angle and a close-up shot. And that means it doesn't matter if you're using a phone or something. Try to think of a video as a set of photographs, right? Which means, let's say, going back to that Potter example, how do I shoot that photo? And sometimes people just keep on moving their camera because it's a video, so keep it on and keep it pointing in different directions. But a nice visual flow is where you have some order. Like let's first take a wide angle shot of this person's house. Next shot is this person's full body where he or she is doing something. Then maybe a shot of the actual the equipment that they use, and some maybe the clays or terracotta is lying somewhere and what they have made earlier. So bunch of different shots, if they are arranged in a manner which, let's say I put that story on mute, would I still just enjoy watching it in that sequence? Or if I put that on mute, it's very random that a slow motion leaf shows up, a dog shows up, just because we like to shoot it and we put it in any random order. This again, you develop slowly and can definitely be taken care of in editing as long as you have all the shots. So when in doubt, just shoot everything with a wide angle and close up. And if you have a phone, just take the phone close enough so that for the same thing, you have 2-3 different shots. And there's something called medium angle. And try to look at your video also like a set of photographs. So that means do not pan the camera in all directions unnecessarily, and we'll come to that. Foreground and background. Often initially initially when you begin, you end up focusing on just the subject. It takes a while for you to realize that your frame has a lot more other elements, right? And sometimes they're foreground, sometimes they're background. And often just a matter of moving around a little bit gives you a same subject doing the same thing with a little different frame. And it's a matter of taste, but if you move around, you should be very proactively taking those calls than wherever you were, wherever you sat, right? And then just took that shot. Basically, that means it's not a gear function. It's a matter of how much time you have, because sometimes you do have time. You are in a house stuck for 2 hours and you just need maybe 3 minutes of shot. So what do? Some people just do chit chat and waste their energy too much, right? And as a filmmaker, you realize that energy is everything. Somebody has invited you to do justice. So make sure that if you have a chance to move around and get your shot in a better way, and that will lead to eventually much better impact. In a scripted films, that is obviously everything is planned. So mostly you know exactly what you want. When you visit somebody in their environment or in a market and stuff, sometimes you don't have time to get what you want, but often I have seen that people do have time, but they take shots when they have the energy, right? As a filmmaker, you want to make sure that your energy, you don't lack energy when something really nice is happening. And it is happening and you have more time. You look at the frame than just the subject. And you will develop this over time. When you go back and look at the same shot in the computer, you're like, you know what, I could have shot it like this. Same goes for camera movement. When in doubt, don't move the camera. Treat your shots like a photo. So much easier to edit, so much easier to tell a nice story. And again, a lot of times people just keep moving the camera unnecessarily up and down here and there and keep walking with it. And I mean, throwing this as a keyword, because if you just go to YouTube and look for how to use camera movement to tell a better visual story, you will find a lot of stuff on that. So maybe grasp it. But to begin with, I would sincerely advise, try to not move the camera. Keep the frame static, let things inside it move, then change the frame, go somewhere else, take one more moving photo. It's the easiest, lets you appreciate what is happening. Likewise, a little bit on the gear, if in the order of acquiring things, I don't know how many of you already have something, but whatever gear you have, based on where you are shooting, who you are shooting, and what time you are shooting, you can let go of some of these things, or might have complicated technical stuff. Which means that for the same gear, if you have the option to decide morning, day, sun, option to decide if you can want to shoot in their house or the office or the street, or who you are shooting, are they comfortable with camera, are they not comfortable with camera, you will have to take those calls. Which means just because you have something, don't show up with that. Be aware of these three scenarios: who you are shooting, where you are shooting, and what time you're shooting determines what gear you'll use. So to begin with, for most of the video, phone is absolutely good to get started, as long as you stick to those things we discussed in the last slide, right? Be a little more thoughtful of what is being shot. Number two comes the mic. Generally, phone, say video, to get good quality by default means your environment has to be quiet, which works, right? In a quiet, if you're in a rural area, in a house, sometimes it works. When it doesn't work, mic is the second thing you would want to invest in. So basically, I'm saying don't invest in any camera to begin with. If you don't already have one, really wouldn't matter. We really wouldn't create any much difference, frankly. I mean, it will create a little aesthetic difference, but most of the beginners are anyway bad at almost all the aspects we spoke about, right? So buying a good camera just makes it a good looking bad story. So really not worth it. Mic definitely makes the audio clear, especially when you are putting B-rolls, right? So when we are looking at a not so clear audio, but we're looking at the person's face, most of us can sort of lip read or subtitle or something like that. But the moment you put B-rolls and I'm looking at something else, but somebody else is speaking, it becomes very difficult to follow the story. So in the beginning, if you don't have mic, just subtitles is good enough. People watch it on mute anyway. But when you have the option, maybe 4,000, 5,000 bucks in a mic, make sure that audio is no more an issue with you wherever you can shoot. Of course, I will not get into details of audio because based on the environment, I have a bunch of different audio. But for phone level, a simple lavalier mic is fine. I find it difficult because sometimes to put that mic, as a guy, if I go in a house and there's a woman, I wouldn't know where to place the mic. So I try to do a boom mic. But these days, you can also just ask them to hold it while they are talking, which also works. But good audio makes it a little more easy to follow your story. And then comes the rest of the things. I will even skip that, but there are ways to move the camera. You could move it on a drone. You could move it on the ground. You could have some sort of a gimbal to move it. But again, don't move it because you have the equipment. Makes zero sense. Which again, if you have gone to some weddings, you have seen the guys with gimbal just moving around the venue all the time. So that's the mistake that we do. We do whatever equipment we have, we start using it. So we buy some camera, we take it to a venue where it would have been more appropriate to go with a phone. We buy a GoPro, we start shooting everything with a GoPro. So try to avoid deciding the tool first. If you know I want to move something, that is when you should even buy anything to move the camera. And as I said, till then, keep it static. Most phone cameras you hold with your hand, it will be static. Maybe you can buy a tripod to begin with if you really think that your hands are not stationary, or like it's a 20-minute interview, so you would rather want to hold it and stuff like that. And last comes light. Again, if you can control when you are shooting and where, you can manage without lights almost all the time. So only when you have done it for enough years and you're like, how do I mildly make my shots better? You can go in the lights. All of these are give more headache. That's why I said backup is good. The more you carry, the more things will go wrong, right? So assume that something will go wrong. If you have only one phone and you travel like 2 days, imagine that your phone will die. So just have one more phone or figure out somebody else's phone. Everything else is fine. You can always do without a mic. You can always do without moving the camera. And for me, everything has stopped working at some point of time for sure. Like, some drone crashed in Africa, some light car battery, something fell down. And every camera has stopped working at some point of time during the middle of the shoot. So if it's very important and you can't go back, go with a backup. Assume that all these electronic things will die on you exactly when you don't want it. And if you're prepared for it, you will A, remember me, and B, will not panic. You're like, all right, this was supposed to happen. It happened today.
Amrit, I think the PPT is stuck.
Oh,
I think a few slides, yeah.
But this was the only slide, a bit on gear. Are we on a bit on gear?
No, we're on the elements that help you create better video stories.
Okay, let me just stop share and reshare again. But I mean, yeah, the slide पे उतना ही लिखा था जो मैंने बोला. Are the slides moving now?
Yes.
Cool. I mean, there is nothing much here.
Yeah,
it is more talking points for me. So now I will quickly close this so that I can take more questions, frankly. So I will talk more about what makes the story engaging, right? And as I said, a lot of micro entrepreneur stories could just be the hook and the context setting. Like all you are showing is this is what they do. and you will realize that 2-3 minutes ho jata hai, 2-3 minutes will get over, and which is fine. You do not always have to have a story, but if you do have a story, try to bring it out. What does this person want is the typical opening of the story. And if it's not clear to me why, let's say, I don't know, what a Potter will say that this year the business went down because of COVID, I hope it goes up right now. That could be the beginning, as long as you are clear what happens in the end, right? Something like that. Now, if once you know the beginning and the end, the elements that make any story engaging, and especially when you can script it, is if somebody takes an action, right? He says, I am today going to this market and trying talk to this Seth who has said that he will buy from me. That's an action or a move that a person who wants something takes. As I said, that is the active person. We all like to watch their story. A passive person just keeps sitting. They say, you know what, I will keep sitting here, something will happen. So likewise, there is no story there. You can't really make it. Surprise is when you go to that Seth and the Seth had said that he will buy all these cups that you had made, but the Seth is, you know what, it's too costly. Can you lower down your rate? And if you can capture all of that as a documentary filmmaker, nothing like it. Then there's a surprise because, oh shit, I was not expecting that to happen. Choices are, you're like, should this potter sell his pottery to the Seth, or whatever, he needs money, but then maybe he will go and borrow it at like 10% per month from one person and then come back and stuff like that. So whatever. So, and a lot of times it's just narration in what happened already. So all these elements till we reach the end. So what is the conflict? What are the steps that he take? What are the things that surprise me? What are the options that we have to make? And sometimes, somebody else will come and help them because that our character is just stuck. They can't come out of where they are themselves. So all these elements, and they can keep going in a loop. In a 3-minute story, maybe there's maximum 1 or 2 such elements you will be able to find. In a bigger one, and the Netflix documentary, you will see that these things keep on going in loop. There is always something which gets resolved and a new problem happens, and then there's all surprising elements, stuff like that, till eventually whatever we said in the beginning is achieved or / not achieved. And going back to Gully Boy, right? Once we see that Ranveer Singh wants to become a rapper, then he will try to convince this Sher to give him a chance. Then and it will be up and down. Something good will happen. So some video will go viral, but then the next scene, his dad will slap him and say, go become the driver. Once he becomes the driver, he will do something, but then somebody will say, no, take a job and don't do this. So, and up and down, but the same formula repeats till we reach the end. So that's pretty much how you make the journey part between the inciting incident and the end of the story interesting. And then it's a matter of storytelling. Like some people would rely more on surprises. Some filmmakers would rely more on action and moves. Like how much you want to rely on and the way you present it is a matter of personal choice and preference and budget and abilities and stuff like that. So that's all I have really. I have put some 2-3. So I did a breakdown of Gully Boy story structure, which you can watch this once you have the PPT. And I put 2 of my films, which I like a lot. Some of them have a better story structure, and let's say this one is more like a character sketch, which is context setting, some elements of storytelling. Just to prove the point that for a short format, it's very easy to get 3-5 minutes without a proper story structure, and yet it will be engaging because you are drawn to the characters. There is something which is surprising or moving on at all points of time. So you can watch them later after this. So the next 10 minutes, let it be only be questions, and I can answer them.
Yes, Iqbal, you can unmute yourself and ask.
I just wanted to ask, how do we overcome the biases that we carry, that you talked about? How do we become aware of them, and how do we overcome them?
Sorry, how do you overcome the what?
How do we overcome biases that you talked about? First, how do we, become aware of them, and then how do we overcome them?
Good question. I'm wondering if I am the right person to answer that, right? I don't know. Maybe some workshop where they teach you all of that. As a filmmaker, I have just tried. I done workshops myself? But by the way, being a full-time documentary filmmaker, which I'm not right now so much, but when I was just doing this, traveling and meeting to people and asking questions and listening to that with open mind definitely helped a lot than reading books on feminism or just reading book by anybody who wrote about it on the field. So that is, I have observed how much does it really eliminate all the biases and stuff like that. I have no clue, right? I won't know. I can't judge myself, but I do feel that my thought process compared to the peer group that I hung out with, who let's say are still in corporate jobs, is extremely different. So not saying that that is the only way to go about it, but I'm sure there might be better ways, workshop ways, generally hanging out with a diverse group of people. Because let's say hanging out, when I make a friend with a person who is blind, just changes me as a person. I'm sure I still carry a lot of biases, but it's definitely one step, needle, 1 inch in the right direction is all I can say from my personal experience. But I'm not the best person to like tell everybody how to deal with that. But awareness, just be aware that we all are full of biases, especially if we belong to the community, which in the ecosystem we operate in. If we have more power, then we just carry them and we don't realize them. That's just know that. After that, I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If anybody has any specific person you want to meet or make a story on or anything, like, you can also just ask that. Like, I can give inputs on how to approach that if you want, or something you did already and stuff like that. Yeah, Iqbal, you have raised your hand again.
Yeah, sorry if I may ask one more question. I mean, how do we decide when to use subtitles and when to let the voice of the speaker flow, especially if you want to, the target of the AV is somebody who does not understand the language in which the subject is speaking. I mean, how do we decide that when we should, do a voiceover and when we should, let the subject speak and give the subtitles?
Okay, so this is not so much of a filmmaking question. It's a very tactical question. I mean, just be smart about what you plan to do. I mean, you imagine how it's going to be consumed, who will watch it, and what makes it easiest for them to understand it. That's the answer to that question. There is no right or wrong answer there. Like, subtitle is easy, especially if there is an option for people to change languages there, right? YouTube lets you do that. So if I know that subtitle is not hard coded on the video, but while voice over, I don't know if there's a technology on YouTube which lets you change. Netflix lets you do that right now. So if it's changeable, right now subtitles are always changeable because you can upload multiple subtitles. Voice over, the effort to record 3 different languages is obviously more. So unless it's very necessary, stick with the voiceover, which you think most of your audience, you can have to take a guess on that, will understand, and the subtitle could sort of complement that and add more to it.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Is it better to capture views of the potter about business while in action or at his leisure time? So Tamal, the answer to that is, as I said, right? First thing is, why are we making this video? This answer to this question can't be asked to me. I have no clue, right? Why am I making? So I have made one potter story, not like from raising money, just as an artist, right? So my story was about life of an artist, and this artist happened to be a ceramic artist. So I just wanted to make the whole film as a deep dive into the thought process of an artist. And I wouldn't even therefore call it a stories, although my brand is called 3-minute story. So most people do not know the difference between a story and non-stories. Nobody would challenge me. Plus, my story is also not 3 minutes. So I'm cheating on both counts. But because I made it like that, so I made sure that I just shot her playing a song on a guitar, even making some coffee. And it so happened that she actually spoke about something while making a coffee, which was, earlier before making all this ceramic and stuff. I did not know where this mug was coming from. So if you watch that video, just almost fits very nicely as well. So there is no right or wrong answer if you go with a very clear agenda. So some of these stories like life of an artist, there could be a story, right? But sometimes there are struggling artists. There is no end. There is no beginning. It's like, as I said, 3 minutes. You'll just watch some things in slow motion, pottery wheel moving, and you will enjoy it. So those, I call them character sketch stories. And there, if you're doing just bringing out the personality, shoot them in doing bunch of things, because it's not about that pottery itself. So even otherwise, mostly how long can you show somebody making something, right? How long can you do that? It's going to get boring. You could, right? So answer is, if you think that you can't pull off just work for beyond a minute, you will have to figure out different things to do, and everybody has different things that they do in their life. And also, if you know what your exact objective is, you might shoot whatever you think helps you solve that objective. That's the answer. How to become better at video editing? I think if all that I said, if you are aware of all these things, the more you edit with the awareness of what I said, the better you will become at video editing. I can do basic editing, but struggle to pick up advanced skills. So there is, okay, in editing, there are two parts to it, right? The storytelling understanding and the technical skills. For technical skills, I have zero inputs. I don't think I am the most advanced technical editor. Once I know what I want, I can ping somebody and say, oh, I need this input. So I don't have to be the advanced technical editor myself. But our storytelling editor knows why these three shots were arranged in a certain way. You know, why this part of the interview came first and this came later. You can call it also directing, because literally in a documentary style, you are arranging the flow of everything to tell a particular story. So the editor becomes the storyteller to an extent, right? As long as all the footage, all the interview is done. So when you say advanced skill, I'm assuming you mean like some super effect and stuff like that, or the tools, like if you're using a Premiere, how to grade something like that and how to do sound editing and stuff like that. For everything, there is a tutorial. Like you can just go to YouTube and pick it up. When I require, I do it. But these days, I find it just cheaper to ask somebody else to do it. It's technical skills is a commodity, right? Like in a movie, Sanjay Leela Bhansali might be giving the coloring job of his film to the same person who is doing a Raju Hirani film. It doesn't really matter. What matters, so again, if you are looking at being a great technical guy, look at it like a very technical skill. My entire talk today was very non-technical. It was how to tell stories from a non-technical POV. And I feel that almost for most of the software, FCPX or Adobe Premiere, there is a video for every single thing, how to do grading better, how to do sound cuts better. And it just takes time. So to become better, you edit it. Once you know what you want, YouTube for that. Learn that one feature at a time, and in about a year, you would be better off than where you were. I do not know if any free open source software, simply because I have used Final Cut Pro myself, and most of the editors I work with use Adobe Premiere. There must be free open source softwares. 10 years back, I think some movie maker I had, but I've forgotten about it. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they are there, and basically they might also work. Okay. That's a good question. How, in terms of cost benefit, how does the audio visual fare against written story or photographs or written story? I think the answer is the medium, right? If your story is going to be consumed over emails, why would you make a video on that? Doesn't make any sense, right? So if you again, just ask, how is my story going to reach my audience? If the way it's going to reach your audience, or even the newsletter guy says that, see, when we send a newsletter and the most of the clicks happen on the video, you already have your answer. But if they say, people do read, I have a Substack and people do subscribe, these get shared on LinkedIn and people do read. Answer is, when not necessary, don't make a video. Makes zero sense. But if your platform is YouTube, if somebody says, I need a 2-minute video to begin my presentation, what do you do with that, right? So answer is the medium decides whether audio visual makes more sense or not. Rashi is asking me, how did I come to 3-minute stories? So again, this is the question that she has asked, right? What is a good time frame is what I asked myself when I was thinking of a name. So I had wasted a bunch of time for a people and trying to make a full-fledged documentary film about 7-8 years back, and realized I cannot make one. So I asked this myself, like, I now can't make a film, and I wasted people's time by capturing B-rolls, a lot of interviews, infinite stuff, and can't make anything because I can't edit, like Himanshu was saying, right? Like, I just couldn't know what to do with it. So I asked myself, how much time will it take? I thought 1 minute will be too tight, probably. 7-8 years back. I also thought 2 minutes mein Maggie mein nahi banta, maybe mera story nahi banega. So I just settled on 3. Same from the cost benefit point, right? The shorter, the lesser effort from me. Though moving forward, I think that it's very difficult to make something in 3 minutes. I would now settle on 5. And 2 things have happened. Since then, YouTube has really become huge. So on YouTube, if your audience is going to be on YouTube, they hate 3-minute stories. YouTube audience will say, please make it longer. I started watching it. It ended too soon. So the answer again is, if your platform is Instagram, 1-minute story makes sense. If your platform is YouTube, 7 to 8-minute story makes sense. So that's my answer, because earlier I was not thinking in terms of where they're watching it. So again, if you're screening it in a movie theater, there is a reason they want, itne dur se aaye, aadhe ghante mein you can't stop it. Therefore, the short films only get featured in the theaters. So that's the short answer. There is only two binary now. Either make it 1 minute, don't make 3 minutes. That's my advice. Is 3 minute has zero place. Aajkal 3 minute, 2, 3, 4 minute, I think works best in physical presentation. So if there's a physical event happening or a captive audience is there, like this event, I could have opened with a 3 minute story because 7 would have been too long and 1 would have been too short. So this is my answer. For conferences, webinars, and events, 2 to 3 minutes is a nice duration. Is it really possible to tell a story via reels, say 30 seconds? No. So first question, even in 3 minutes, you most likely can't tell a story, by the way. Even in 5 minutes, most likely you will just be able to tell a character, like you can somehow force fit a story. So I feel that let's not get caught up in the word story. Let's realize, what do we want to achieve? Do we want to raise money? Do we want to, I don't know, get followers? Do we want to tell people that we exist? That's it. What does it take for me to achieve that? And you are bound by platform. So I'm saying, do something which helps you achieve that in 30 seconds, whether it's a reels or story. It's all a content. So I would suggest that we don't have to get caught up in the word story and stuff like that. If Instagram is not letting people watch a long video, what can you do about it? And yeah, you have to go to where the audience is. Hey Raj. Yep, I remember. How do I face budget constraint? I mean, so you can only spend the money that you have. So I think the answer to that is in your question itself. You optimize, right? So like somebody says, first, if decide how much money / time is going to be spent, and priority will keep changing on a case-to-case scenario. But the money is already fixed. Let's say when I was working with the India fellows where Aishwarya was there, money was fixed, something like, we want to spend 5 lakh on doing something. Then you go back and recalculate. Does it mean I send 3 different cinematographers in 3 different places? Do I ask them to shoot with 2 cameras? Do I just ask a volunteer there to use a phone? You do a backward calculation and see what is the best possible. And sometimes you'll have 2, 3 options. You can discuss that 2, 3 options with whoever is approving the budget and say, you know what, in this much of money, we can approach it either like this, or we make one big story and not make 10 stories. So sometimes it will be taking a hit on the total number of videos versus some equipment and whatever, who shoots, what time we shoot, do we get some amateur to shoot and stuff like that. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Amrit, for spending time with us and making, at least for me, I think video storytelling not very overwhelming and taking away the technical scare from it. I think the keywords that you shared will help, at least as a good starting point, to be able to think of how to tell a visual AV story. And yeah, I hope you find time soon to make a 3-minute story. Part time ho gaya nahi banaya aapne.
Cool.